Hi, I'm Jim May with the Northglenn Police Department. I have a special guest with me today. Chris Gdowski with Adams 12 5-Star Schools is with me to discuss some of the things that are happening within the school in regards to safety. So Chris, welcome.
Yeah, thanks, Chief. It's good to be here, and thanks to you and the members of your team for getting us off to a good start this school year.
Yeah. So one thing, that you've been very supportive of our school resource officers in the schools and what they provide. So just maybe give us why that's so important to you in this community.
You bet. The starting place for that is we just love having somebody with the skill set that a police officer has. If we have an act of violence or a threat at school, there's no substitute for having a trained professional on site and responding to that. So that's the first in the list. But beyond that, what your department does well and what our agency partners throughout our district do well is build positive relationships with kids. And so beyond being the first line of defense if we have something challenging, our SROs build great relationships with kids. They're mentors, they're role models that kids look up to. And we see what I've just said borne out in data, where our parents, our staff, and especially our kids, 80% plus of our kids say, we really value SROs in our schools.
So one of the things that's really important for me, and my history when it comes to school shootings and being prepared, right? You never want to have a Uvalde situation here in Adams County. So we just got through one of our active shooting trainings with all our staff, but we also try to make sure during lockdown procedures at the schools, our officers working the road get into those schools and see that. So, and your staff works tremendous with us and all that, and they take that really serious. And their safety in the schools have been amazing. So I really appreciate that partnership that we have, doing that. So
us too. We've done some changes to how we do drills over time. In the past, we did more unannounced drills, and for some students, that was a triggering event and created lots of anxiety that we felt like wasn't as productive as we'd want it to be. But practicing, even if you announce to kids and staff in advance and to parents that we're going to do one of these drills, it's good just to have some times where you're modeling out what you would do if a real situation emerged, and having your officers in to walk us through that is tremendously helpful. It's good for your officers to know our buildings inside and out, so that if they have to come, they're not trying to figure out their way around a building. So we appreciate the investment of time and energy in that effort.
So I know you invested a lot in school district taking that safety, and I know you have some teams that you have of individuals that you're putting into the schools and into the district. Can you talk about that and their purpose?
You bet. So we have a director of security that oversees our overall efforts in that space and often responds to the more challenging situations we may have. Then we have a number of individuals who are security specialists who are post-certified, authorized to carry weapons. That helps us fill some of the gaps that exist either when people are out ill as SROs or they have training. Sometimes it allows us to have more coverage at elementary schools where we can't staff SROs at present. So we have that layer of support. We have a number of individuals who are involved in the threat assessment process, including a former Northglenn Police Department officer and SRO. And so seeing out of the hundreds of kids each year that sometimes come to our attention, might they pose a threat? That threat assessment team can dig in deeply, sometimes gather more information from law enforcement and evaluate, is this a kid that maybe hasn't engaged in conduct that warrants suspension or expulsion, but that we want to check their backpack and just make sure that they're weapon free as they come in through the start of the day. And then finally, we have an emergency preparedness coordinator who makes sure that we're doing fire drills, tornado drills, also is involved in the lockdown drills that you're talking about. So we feel like we invest a lot of time and energy in that space. Parents tell us consistently, we want our kids to grow academically, we want them to have fun, to enjoy all of what school has to offer, including extracurriculars. But the most important thing you can do for us as a school district is to keep our kids safe. And we appreciate the partnership very much.
Yeah. Well, the other thing I want to get into too is how important Safe to Tell is for you and your staff and for us. So did you want to talk about that at all? Because I heard the numbers were down, they're coming in of, compared to other years, but I was wondering Have you seen an uptick in people using that service? Or
Yeah, safe to tell there can be waxes and wanes in terms of how many people are submitting those reports. And for a while after the pandemic, it had reduced down a bit. We're starting to see some increase again. And that can be a helpful resource, not just for anonymously reporting that someone's talking about a school shooting or perpetrating violence, or maybe some groups of students who are going to fight. Those are helpful things for us to know about, and we can prevent a lot of things happening in that space. But beyond that, one of the things we often hear about is that there's a student who's thinking about suicide. And that's not something that was initially on my radar when Safe to Tell came out, but it becomes one of the bigger areas of student communication and allows us to do a suicide risk assessment for a kid who's identified there. And I think we've saved a lot of lives, frankly, because of the heads up that we get through Safe to Tell, both in terms of suicide risk and at times about kids who are making threats through social media or through other means that may not happen directly on school, but that it's still important for us to know about and investigate and take action on.
Yeah, several years ago, I know the school district had a lot of tragedy when it came to the suicides in youth, and you and your team have stepped up and had meetings and everything else, and community meetings, and I was very impressed with that. And that's one thing that never goes away. It doesn't matter. You're always looking at that. You're always doing stuff to identify those kids that are feeling that trauma, and how we can help not only us as the police department, but also your staff and everything else to get them help. So, I appreciate the school district's work on that, because any kid taking their own life is too many. So,
yeah, we appreciate that. That more folks are just aware about the suicide risk and taking action to get a kid evaluated by us or into a hospital. I saw recently a media report saying that suicides are down, but risk assessments and students, young people go into a hospital for evaluation has gone up dramatically. And that's the way we want it to be, is let's get them help and let's prevent students making decisions that are often just based on a really small segment of challenge in their life and impulsive in many cases. And if we can get the right help in place, we can help those kids have really good long lives.
Yeah. The other thing I wanted to bring up, and it's kind of selfish on my part, as you know, recruiting has been very challenging for police departments across the nation. But your school district's doing something really special that I'm very interested in, because it's those future police officers and talk about that program.
You bet. So as part of our 2018 mill levy override that our community gave us some supplemental funding on, we were able to expand into some public safety pathways that we hadn't before. So we've had a long-standing EMT program, lots of interest there, kids love that. But then we were able, because of that new revenue, to add a firefighting program and a law enforcement pathway. And in law enforcement, we have students doing lots of work around crime scene investigation. We took legislators to that facility last week, and they were learning how students go about fingerprinting and making lots of analyses about how long has this victim been dead, if you had that kind of situation. It's exciting for 17 and 18-year-old kids to be having those experiences. And what we've seen thus far, a few things that I think are different than the prevailing narrative. One is that there's tremendous demand and interest in this from students across our district. We actually had to turn a lot of kids away this last year because we couldn't find enough instructors to cover all the classes. So if there are any retired law enforcement folks out there watching who might have interest in working with kids and teaching them about this profession, we'd love to hear from you. And then beyond that, we have a lot of students of color and a lot of female students who are engaged in that program. Disproportionately, that program has students of color, largely Latino students, and young females who have interest in serving in that way. And we just feel like that will help us over time grow a police force that looks more and more like the community we serve and can help you and the neighboring jurisdictions fill some spots.
No, that's absolutely, I'm really excited about that, because one thing law enforcement we don't do really well is recruiting from our own communities. And hearing the amount of kids going through that program that are our local kids that grew up here, that's exciting, having them come all the way through those programs. Some of the things I would love to help also make available to them too is we have a teen police academy that we've had since 1999. Get them to maybe enroll in that. Some other where they're going to have police instructors and everything else that are currently doing the job, which is like a 10, 12-week program. And the other thing too is the city council is really looking in. Well, I've said, hey, I'd love to have a cadet program, and that's something I'm hoping to bring back to council in the next year or so, that we can, really get them, because it's hard going from graduating at 18. You can't become a police officer until you're 21.
Right.
Love to have them going to college, get
You bet.
an education, which is super important, but maybe somehow we can support those individuals when they're going to school or when they're off for the summer, try to provide some type of on-the-job, for them here at the police department. So I'll be trying to work those deals out. So they'll
That would
probably
be
say, "Why are you
fantastic."
and I'm throwing it out there, in the universe. So if people have ideas and stuff like that, maybe I'll come back and.
Yeah, that's often the big barrier, is that we have kids who are just really juiced to go out and be involved in law enforcement when they finish up as graduating seniors, but they've got that age gap. And if there's ways for kids to be riding along with officers, maybe having a paid job that allows them to contribute in dispatch or something else. I don't know what all the opportunities are, but having ways that kids can get plugged in before they're 21 would be great.
The other thing that I think, do work well together, and that's with traffic issues around schools. Our public works director, Kent Kisselman, I know, and his engineers have gone out and have done evaluations on schools, working with your staff to make sure that it's the safest environment possible. But this time of year, parents forget how drop off kids. So we put a lot of resources, and I know your staff has really stepped up that process as well of trying to make sure the safety going to and coming from is very important.
We appreciate all that the city's doing in that space, whether it's the signage that I see starting to come out in early August before school starts, just letting people know, hey, slow your roll. School's starting soon. Be more aware than perhaps you have been during summer. And then the various traffic slowing devices, the speed bumps and things that I see in lots of our areas that are close to our schools, that's helpful to get people slowing it down. I know that council and your department takes speeding seriously, and there's lots of enforcement actions that happen there. And then certainly that space right around the school where you have buses coming in and parents doing drop-off and kids running around. There's a lot of meetings that I know have happened with your team, with the engineering department and our staff during my tenure to say, let's re-engineer this differently and reduce some risks. So I think the combination of all that has put us in a good spot of reducing risk to kids.
Well, I appreciate you coming and spending some time with me today. Do you have anything else that you have questions on or that you would like to?
I guess the other shout out I would do to you, Chief, and to the department is our gratitude for a lot of what you do outside of the pure safety space, whether it's doing bike rodeos and having kids come do us obstacle course and find good bike safety. That's a huge value. That Halloween trick-or-treat night over at Northglenn High School that I think you may have started up years ago and that your department leans into heavily, gives thousands of kids really a safe place to go and have fun and get some candy. And then at Christmas time, I know your officers are very involved in looking for kids in need and finding ways to get gifts in their hands. And it's those pieces in addition to what you do each and every day in terms of safety that really makes the connections between your officers and our kids first rate and makes us really proud to be your partner.
Yeah, it's our absolute pleasure doing those things and with the school district, and love this community, and you're a big part of it. So, Chris, thank you so much.
Thanks, Chief. Appreciate you.
All right. Appreciate
Take care.
You. All right. Thank you.